words and the words of his son at face value, they will fight to the end. And that means they will use every instrument of force at their disposal internally to repress, to counter attack, and to essentially barricade Tripoli and isolate it for as long as possible from the rest of the country and use it as a base. Now, could that be a sustainable scenario beyond a few days or a few weeks? I don't think so. In part because the international community has finally come to terms with what is happening in Libya. And to the extent that the Americans are willing to lead, and lead with a couple of scenarios that will help accelerate the disintegration of the regime and the exit of Gaddafi, I think this period may be shortened. But I don't think, and I agree here with the guest you just had, that there is no going back to a Libya under Gaddafi. There's no going back to a Libya where Saif or his father would rule, unless you're willing to go through the scenario of bloodshed and civil war.
We are hearing that conclusion from so many people, but most of them, it has to be said, like yourself, are anti-Gaddafi Libyans, and that is the scenario that they would like to see. Let's assume for a moment that it does transpire. What you're saying, though, is that before we get to that point, we're going to have to see some bloodshed, because not simply in terms of the protesters being shot, but in terms of Gaddafi himself going down. I mean, he is not leaving, so we can't get to a post-Gaddafi era without some sort of assault on Tripoli and presumably the death of Gaddafi himself.
Possibly, unless, of course, we imagine a scenario, and that's also equally likely, of some of the remaining individuals around him within his own tribe or within the security establishment, taking matters into their own hands and ending Gaddafi's rule in the AlJazeera barracks, where he's now essentially barricaded. That is also an equally likely scenario. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think the suggestion that further bloodshed has to take place is one where Gaddafi, all the cards are still in Gaddafi's hands, and he is left essentially to dictate how we move from this point on.
All right. Now, as I say, just very quickly, everyone seems to be predicting the end of the Gaddafi era, but there does seem somewhere in the back, not only in his head, to be some suggestion of support, and we're hearing rumours that Algeria is coming to his aid in some form or another. Can you confirm that? Do you know about the relationship there, and is that likely to be some sort of a prop for him?
I can't exclude that possibility. I think a lot of governments in the Arab world are nervous about the demise of a dictator and the manner that it's taking place. Remember, Libya is going through a transition now after what Tunis and Egypt have gone through. This is a remaking of the internal Arab domestic order. A lot of autocrats still in power are extremely nervous about this, and it would not surprise me that some of the old remnants of even Tunisia's Republican Guard might be aiding and abetting in this fight, partly because they sought refuge in Libya after Ben Ali had fled. So, right. Mercenaries, ex-Republican guards, some of the intelligence apparatus within the Arab world, if they want to put themselves against the Libyan people, their aspirations and their hopes at the moment, I think the Libyan people will ultimately win.
Tarek Youssef for the moment, thank you. Now, as we're saying, the uprisings that we've seen across the Middle East are still far from over. In Egypt, the ruling military council has now had to apologize after military police were seen beating protesters during overnight demonstrations in Cairo. The council said the violence was the result of unintentional confrontations between the military police and the youth of the revolution. It stressed that it did not and will not issue orders to attack protesters. Now, Friday did see thousands of Egyptians demonstrating in Tahrir Square. They want reforms to be enacted faster and for ministers linked to the Mubarak regime to go. Our correspondent, Anita McNaught, is live for us in Cairo. Anita, still seemingly some threads, some elements, some tendencies of the old regime apparent in Cairo, but sum it all up for us. Is the ultimate situation we're facing a return to the old style or progress?
Well, that is exactly the question that last night's events has raised, Taimur. It was a jarring note that has deeply unsettled the protesters here. And while Tahrir Square at the moment is not closed, there are a lot of people milling around there. The possibility of a rally to protest against what happened between midnight and 1 a.m. Cairo time last night is being considered. It seems there are only about a couple of hundred, maybe 300 protesters left in and around Tahrir. They were bedding down for the night. And the new rhythm, as you understand it, is that it's a Friday protest, a regular routine of Friday protests. And the one that I was at yesterday was a very benign affair, almost a carnival affair at times, people selling mementos, selling food, a lot of children with face paint, a celebratory feel, but also a reminder of what needs to be done still. But the military police moved in at midnight with the pretext that they had a curfew to enforce and cracked down with quite disproportionate brutality. The protesters, of course, are saying it's not enough simply to say there won't be any arrests of protesters, as the military on its Facebook page today has said. They want to see some justice for what they feel was a completely inappropriate use of force. But does it signify a break in trust between people and the military? Does it signify a return to greater brutality as we saw? That's the question that is posed.
The other question, Anita, is what you just mentioned a moment ago. What needs to be done, what remains to be done in the eyes of the protest movement. Now, they're saying it's not going fast enough. Tell us what has been achieved in that regard and what more they want to see.
Well, today is a day to answer at least some of that, Taimur, because in an hour or so from now, we will hear from the committee that the Supreme Military Council appointed to look at revising 6 articles in the Egyptian constitution. This is seen as an absolute test of the military's commitment to significant and meaningful reform. This committee is going to come back and talk about how far it thinks that these commitments, these changes to the constitution can be made. We don't know yet. We've had rumours, but we don't know yet what the basic hard facts are. And these changes, as suggested by this committee, will be put to a national referendum within a period of 2 months. So a new sense of expectation here as we see exactly what the military, the ruling military council at the moment, and the people they have gathered around them to reform Egypt's system of government, how far they're prepared to go.
Anita McNaught, live in Cairo. Thanks, Anita. To Yemen now, where a number of major tribes have joined the pro-democracy movement, demanding that President Ali Abdullah Saleh step down. Hashim Al-Bara is our correspondent in the capital, Sana'a. He joins me now live on the line. Hashim, what's been going on?
Well, let me just give you an update on the situation here in Yemen. We know now that 5 people were killed in clashes with security forces yesterday in the city of Aden. Government is laying the blame on the secessionists in the city, saying that they are the ones who started opening fire on security forces. However, the secessionists and the pro-democracy activists in the city told AlJazeera that they were marching on the main streets of Aden when they suddenly were met by brutal force unleashed by security forces. Government still insists that calls for independence in the south won't be tolerated in Yemen. As far as the Hashid tribe, which has just held a huge gathering, it is the most influential tribe in Yemen, which has had a major say on all major decisions and events in the history of Yemen. President Saleh comes from Hashid, but he doesn't come from the influential traditional elite of the tribe. Today, the Al-Ahmar family, which is the tribal leadership of Hashid, has decided to join the anti-government protesters, citing concerns about future of the country, brutal clampdown on the protesters here on the streets of Sana'a. If the whole family decides to join the anti-government protest, this is going to be the biggest blow to President Ali Abdullah Saleh, because if he loses Hashid, that would further erode the public support they has enjoyed over the last 3 decades.
Just quickly, Hashim, you say it will be the biggest blow, but just how big a blow is it? I mean, as you say, the president comes from Hashid, the tribe is a powerful one. Could this be the tipping point in Saleh's rule?
Just to give you a simple idea, one of the sons of Al-Ahmar is the Deputy Speaker of the Parliament. The second is the a business magnate and leader of the opposition. Sadr is the leader. Most of the members of this tribe are represented in all echelons of society and government. They are represented in the intelligence agencies, government, military, and also embassies all over the world. So if they decide to join their leadership and to go with the anti-government protesters, suddenly Ali Abdullah Saleh would find himself stripped away from the backbone of his government, and that could just further isolate him and show to the Yemenis that Ali Abdullah Saleh is increasingly besieged with more and more key tribes and officials defecting and joining the pro-democracy movement.
Hashim Al-Bara in Sana'a. Thank you, Hashim. Now, Iraq's largest oil refinery has come under attack from a team of gunmen. At least 2 oil workers were killed in the assault. The plant is part of the Beji complex, around 250 kilometers north of Baghdad. The gunmen infiltrated the refinery in the middle of the night, laying bombs in strategic areas. They then fled before detonating the devices. The attack caused extensive damage, leaving the plant out of action for an estimated several weeks. The impact is expected to be felt mostly in the domestic market. The refinery supplies almost half of Iraq's petroleum products for the domestic market, including gasoline and heating oil. Jane Araf has more from Iraq's capital, Baghdad.
This was a serious breach of security at one of Iraq's biggest oil installations. This time, it wasn't one of the pipelines or the oil fields, which is home to foreign investment. It's the biggest refinery in the country, the Beji refinery north of Baghdad. According to officials there, gunmen infiltrated the facility at 4:30 this morning, spraying the place with gunfire after they left as they laid bombs in control rooms. Those bombs set off fires that have caused extensive damage to a large part of the refinery. One engineer was killed by smoke inhalation, another technician killed by gunfire as the gunmen went out shooting. He says they're assessing not only the damage to the refinery, but exactly how this security breach could have happened. The facility is protected by a unit attached to the Ministry of the Interior. He says they are trying to increase confidence among staff who are afraid to come back to work, but in the short term it will lead to a shortage of gasoline, a shortage of kerosene, and certainly have an impact on the confidence of Iraqis that their government can keep these installations safe.
Israeli warplanes have attacked a refugee camp in the Gaza Strip. The Al-Baraj camp was hit in the early hours of the morning. An Israeli army spokesperson says the airstrike was in response to rockets being fired into southern Israel. 9 civilians traveling in a private van have been killed by a roadside bomb in Afghanistan. It happened in the eastern province of Host. Police say 4 children are among the dead. Let's take a break from